in a way which I can understand, and therefore just about anyone can understand. And Robert Cripps was one of these. He's a very, very clever man. Set up all sorts of private companies which produced new inventions and made a pile of money. And then he's also a professor of music and in several universities, including in Egypt and in America. So he's a sort of Renaissance man. He can do just about anything. And he got really interested in helping me. And he's a really wonderful support because he could show perfectly logical ways in which people could calculate longitude and latitude without clocks and latitude without sextants. And he built a model to test it, and it worked. And so he was absolutely invaluable to me. Now, sadly, he just quite suddenly died.
Oh.
Just like that. And just before 1434 went to the publishers. So he never saw the book, but he's been an incredible help to me.
After I read the work that he did and his influence with you, I was led to ask you about him. He talked about the 23-hour, 56-minute day.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So he essentially, just his brilliance, I think, was he pointed out to me that if there is a unique event in the sky, which everyone on Earth can see at the same time, like a lunar eclipse, then the different times which different observers see that unique event is a direct correlation of their difference in longitude. So, for example, if the eclipse is seen by an astronomer in Beijing at sunset, and it's seen by the observer in the Indian Ocean 6 hours after sunset, then the observer in the Indian Ocean is 6 hours difference in longitude, or 6 hours out of 24 hours, which is 1/4, which is 90 degrees in longitude, being 1/4 of 360 degrees. So what has to be done is to have a timing device which will time between sunset and, say, 8 hours later. And that timing device could be a water clock, drips of water coming out of something, receptacle. And in fact, a number of professors, Professor J.M. Steele being one, have found that the Babylonians in 1600 BC, I think, might have been a bit later than that, but they had these water clocks of sufficient accuracy to be able to calculate longitude through observing eclipses. Well, now, Bob Cribbs explained all that to me so simply, I could put it in the book and virtually everyone would understand it. But if I could just take it a bit further than that, it's a general point. Books, popular history books, people think they're very easy to write. I find them incredibly difficult to write because publishers are very, very concerned about their reputations. And if you write a controversial history book, you can expect, quite reasonably, heavy flack from academics who do know their subject inside out. So the more controversial the book is, the more you have to check and double-check facts. So it is, to publish a book like 1421 or 1434 is a very, very expensive business for a publisher. For example, over 100 people worked on 1421 in one way or another, from illustrations, approvals.
Gorgeous illustrations, too.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's a gorgeously packaged book as well, both of them.
Well, thank you. But, I mean, it is very, very expensive. And then you really haven't got a clue whether people are going to buy it or not. The whole thing is just a huge gamble. But I must confess, I've been incredibly impressed by publishers. They've all got guts, and if they believe in something, they'll have a go. Very heartening.
In The Lost Treasures of Atlantis, the manuscript is done, correct? And it's being prepared for the public. When do you think we'll be able to read that?
Well...
Next year?
Next year, yes, but I'm not sure when. I think probably August. It's the manuscript is they paid me for the manuscript. It's now being the copy editor who has to hand it in on October the 12th, at which stage the timetable is laid down. But I'm reasonably sure it will be August next year.
What made you tackle Atlantis?
It was a complete accident. What really happened is I went to America with a group of research friends to see when the Chinese first went to America. Was it 1600 BC or 400 BC or when? And we found the answer. And when I got home, I was convinced I was going to have a stroke. So I worked like a dog and tried to all this down. And I finished the book at Christmas, and I was so tired I couldn't use my hands. They were locked with arthritis. So Marcella said, look, we'll go away on our own for Christmas. We'll go to a monastery in Crete, and we'll just pray and drink lots of vino and walk by the southern shore of Crete. So we did.
How extraordinary.
Yeah, and on one of these walks, we came across a little harbour, and we said, and where there was a beautiful old palace, and we said, when was this palace built? And they said, 2500 BC. We said, what? Don't be ridiculous. That's as old as the pyramids. And the guide to this palace said, well, the ships from here sailing backwards and forwards to Egypt in 2500 BC, that's 4,000 years before Magellan or Da Gama. So I could not believe it. And I said, what's your evidence? And they said, the evidence comes in the Pharaoh's tombs, paintings in the Pharaoh's tombs, which show these ships arriving from Crete with gifts to the pharaohs. Well, I went and looked at the pictures, and then I was amazed. They're really beautiful ships. So we thought, well, we'd better try and find out if there are any been recently found, buried, or on the sea bottom or whatever. And we didn't have much luck, because we learned that this civilization, called the Minoan civilization, which traded with Egypt, was wiped out by the most ghastly volcanic eruption in 1450 BC, which occurred on an island called Santorini, which is about 70 miles north of Crete. So we thought, okay, well, we'll go to Santorini and see if there are any shipwrecks there. We did. We got a ferry. Off we went to Santorini. And we found that archaeologists had decided to excavate a Minoan town, which was built in roughly 2000 BC on the southern part of Santorini. And by incredible bit of luck, the archaeologists dug down and they found, they came into the drawing room of a very wealthy sea captain, which had been buried in 1450 BC by 50 foot of lava and magma. But when they excavated it, they could see that the paintings around his walls of his palace were in perfect condition, and they showed a fleet of very advanced ships returning to Santorini before 1450 BC, when this volcanic eruption had blown the island to bits. This was absolutely extraordinary. I mean, I could see at once these ships were crewed by getting on for 100 people. They were much bigger than Columbus's ships, much more advanced than Columbus's ships, and they were 4,000 years before him. Well, was there a wreck? And amazingly, 3 wrecks have been found on the coast of Turkey, about 150 miles east of Santorini. And because these ships were carrying copper, the copper's reacted with the seawater to preserve the hull. There are no termites and all the rest. So you can see what the shape of the hull was, the size of the ship, and even more important, you can see the goods that were in the ship when she sank. They can date by dendrochronography of the wood that they sank about 1300 BC. One was slightly older, about 1600 BC. So the contents of the hulls of these ships are goods from 6 different continents. You've got amber from the Baltic, shells from the Maldive Islands, glass from Egypt, and copper. I'll leave copper for the moment. So these ships, you can say for sure, traded all over the world. And that's really